Imagine that love was not just that romantic tingling so often sung in poems and songs, but a force capable of leading you to the deepest knowledge. That is how Socrates thought in 5th century Athens before Christ. For him, to love was not limited to feeling attraction for someone, but meant an impulse toward truth. Love, or eros, as the Greeks called it, appeared as a movement of the soul pushing from the earthly toward the eternal. It was not about flowers, promises, or vows, but about a path of ascent, like climbing an invisible ladder where each step brings us closer to understanding something greater than ourselves. And that perspective changes everything we believe about human passion. Socrates claimed that love is born from lack. We love because we feel that something is missing, an emptiness that seeks to be completed. This idea sounds almost unsettling, because it means that every love relationship begins not with abundance, but with absence. He illustrated it with the figure of an intermediate being, child of poverty and abundance, a symbol representing the perpetual tension between what we have and what we wish to achieve. That tension is the spark that ignites the movement of the soul. Thus, what is fascinating is not what we possess, but what drives us to keep searching. There lies the mysterious force that makes love something more than just a feeling. And here comes the most provocative part. For Socrates, falling in love did not mean stopping at someone's physical beauty. That was only the first station. The true challenge was to learn to see beyond, to connect with the beauty of the soul. A beautiful person can capture the eyes, but it is their character and wisdom that invade the mind and elevate the spirit. Marian Anderson, centuries later, said that love focused only on the physical burns out like quick fire. Socrates already sensed the same thing long before. When we seek only the external, we stop at the surface. But if we climb one step higher, we reach something more lasting. That turns love into a bridge toward depth. To explain this vision, Socrates used striking metaphors. One of the most famous is the so-called ladder of love. Imagine beginning your journey with attraction to a specific body, but instead of getting trapped there, you begin to recognize beauty in many bodies. Then you take a greater leap, inner beauty, the one that doesn't wither with the years. From there, you move upward to the beauty of laws, of ideas, until you reach the purest form of beauty, something eternal and unchanging. In other words, for him, falling in love was a spiritual training. Each personal infatuation was not an end, but a step toward understanding a higher truth. What is surprising is that this theory connects with something we today understand as personal development. When we say someone is attractive for the way they think or act, we are unconsciously following that same Socratic scheme. To recognize intelligence or kindness as forms of beauty shows that there is something in us aspiring to more than just a pretty face. Socrates invites us not to settle for first impressions. If love is a path, then each relationship we live can be a station, a training step toward a higher stage. In a certain sense, each person we love becomes a teacher, preparing us to look further ahead. What's interesting is how this vision contrasted with the culture of his time. In classical Athens, love was celebrated in banquets and poetry. Physical beauty was exalted as a sign of perfection and status. However, Socrates broke those norms by saying that the physical was only a step, and staying there meant halting the journey. This approach was uncomfortable and counterintuitive because it challenged what everyone saw as obvious. And although many considered him strange or even eccentric, his proposal changed the way Western philosophy began to conceive love. he uprooted it from the realm of the intimate and placed it at the center of an intellectual and spiritual search. The revolution of this idea is that love was no longer seen as a passionate accident impossible to control, but as a driving force with direction. Socrates taught that love could and should be educated. It was not a blind force. On the contrary, it was a compass that, well guided, always pointed to the eternal. This is fascinating because it contradicts the modern notion that love is only felt and not thought. For Socrates, to love well required discipline, reflection, and a higher purpose. And if you think about it, that turns every emotion into a possibility of transformation, not merely a weakness of the heart. In this framework arises a provocative question. What happens when we confuse the first attraction with the final goal of love? According to Socrates, that would be like admiring the foot of a ladder and never climbing it. Admiring the superficial may be pleasant, but you remain motionless, discovering nothing beyond. That metaphor is powerful because all of us, at some point, get trapped in the immediate and convince ourselves that that instant is everything. He invites us to look upward, to climb a little higher, even if it hurts to let go of comfort. Because precisely in that detachment lies the possibility of touching something that does not die, something that does not depend on time or chance. The role of love as a quest connects with Socratic meutics, that form of dialogue that sought to bring forth ideas. Just as a conversation could reveal hidden truths, love could unearth higher aspects of our existence. It was almost a pedagogical exercise, moving the soul from the sensible to the intelligible. There is an astonishing parallel between asking questions until reaching the essence of a concept and loving until reaching the essence of beauty. In both cases, the journey matters more than the starting point. And this comparison allows us to think of love not as a romantic destination, but as a mechanism of constant learning. A curious fact is that Plato, Socrates' disciple, was the one who compiled and transmitted this vision in his work, known as the Symposium. There, through dialogues, the idea is presented that love is an intermediary demon, not a perfect god, nor an ordinary mortal. Being the child of need and abundance, it is always in motion, always pursuing. This image reveals that love is never complete, always seeking what it lacks. And if we analyze it deeply, that dynamic remains as valid today as before. To love is to pursue an ideal, to chase something that seems to escape, and in that very pursuit the soul grows. Another striking curiosity is that, in this scheme, love is never static. If a bond stagnates, it ceases to be love in the Socratic sense. That is why, according to this theory, true love is not measured by the intensity of a moment, but by the capacity to drive a journey upward, toward the permanent. This breaks with modern narratives of instant loves, quick crushes, or fleeting passions that burn out in a matter of days. Socrates reminds us that if love does not become a ladder to the higher, then it turns into a mere illusion. And that difference changes the entire way we understand who and how we love. Strange as it may seem, this vision also touched politics and society. For Socrates, a citizen truly in love with wisdom and truth was someone more capable of building a just community. In a way, to love well became a condition for governing well. If we manage to climb from physical attraction to the beauty of laws and justice, love becomes an ally of ethics. This link between passion and governance shows that Socrates saw love as a resource far more powerful than just a private emotion. He understood it as a motor for social order and collective excellence. Today, When we hear this theory, it feels revolutionary because it forces us to ask, in what way do we experience love? Do we live it as a passing feeling or as a journey towards the timeless? What is fascinating about Socrates is that he places us in front of an uncomfortable mirror. Perhaps we think that to love is to possess, but in reality, it might mean learning to let go. Perhaps we believe that to love is to remain, while in his vision it is to move forward, even if that implies leaving something behind. It is a daring invitation to turn our relationships into a laboratory of growth, instead of a place of stagnation. The Socratic approach poses a brutal challenge to see love not as a gift passively given to us, but as training that demands effort. Each physical attraction becomes an opportunity to discover a higher beauty, each intense emotion a spark that must orient the soul toward the eternal. In this sense, to love means to rise, and to rise means daring to leave behind the comfort of the immediate. That revolution turns something as everyday as love into a philosophical phenomenon, into a drive that pulls us toward what never dies. And perhaps that is the key, that to love is not to stop, but to ascend without rest toward truth.